Pound of Flesh by Shembre. Chapter 4. Simba awakened the next morning, stood up and stretched. He looked down and smiled at his sleeping mate and daughter, who were curled up together, keeping warm. It took seeing the small, huddled, dark-furred figure at the mouth of the den for Simba to remember what had happened the day before. Quietly, he walked to the mouth of the den and paused for a minute to watch Kovu as he slept, shivering and twitching in his sleep. The cub's face was pinched. He's got to be scared out of his mind. I'm sure Zira did a good job polluting his mind, making him fear and hate me and my family. Kovu had taken every bit of flesh from the dinner Simba had caught for him. The bones were licked clean. The cub must be starving. He's one of the thinnest cubs I've ever seen. Kovu's nose wrinkled, making his whiskers twitch. When he saw this, a vague memory came back to Simba, and he realized that this was one of the things that Cooper would do before waking up from a nightmare. Simba arched his brows and instinctively lifted a paw to wake Kovu before he quickly pulled back. The last thing he needed to do was scare Kovu further. Is there a way I can reach out to him? Let him know that it's going to be okay. Is he too far gone? Should I ask if he wants to go home? Let him decide. He knew that finding the answers would be difficult. With a small sigh, Simba slipped by Kovu and walked down the side of Bright Rock to start his patrol, reminding himself to make a point to talk to Kovu later, while he took a quick drink at the watering hole. The morning was colder than the one before, but it looked like the sun would quickly fix that. The dew on the grass collected on his golden fur. He headed back to where he had found Kovu and Zira. It didn't take long to find out how Kovu had crossed into the Pride Lands. He put his paws on the fallen tree and pushed. It was stuck there solid. I should have someone help me move that tree. If I had patrolled right up to the border, I would have seen it and had removed it before all of this had happened. But for now, there isn't much I can do. Let's see if Zira and her lionesses did any other poaching. He suspected that he would find evidence of poaching in the days to come. The last poaching had happened 2 days before, and they seemed to go 4 or 5 days before they reoffended. But what could I really do if I caught them? They hunt at night for a reason. They're more concerned about food than attacking. Should I just turn my back and pretend they're not doing it? Or should I reinforce that what they're doing is wrong? Simba closed his eyes and sighed. What would father do? He would challenge them and chase them off, wouldn't he? The outsiders must think I'm weak or too nice because I've left them be. But I just have better things to do, and that doesn't include killing cubs. Then a thought came to him. That must be why Zira gave Kovu to me. She knows I'm really not a cub killer. I told her so, and she lied to gain support from the other mothers. Maybe by not acting, I've proven to be harmless, which might be a problem. Simba's jaw muscles tightened, and when he heard the sound of a twig snapping behind him, he spun around and growled, his heart raced in his chest. Who's there? Kovu ran. He panted so hard that he choked on every gasp of air he sucked into his lungs. The dark field of green grass around him was thick, and it slowed him down to a staggering crawl. The mad growls and furious panting of the monster pursuing him chased him through the grass. Mother! Mother! Kovu cried. Where are you? Help! Help me! Save me! He's gonna kill me! The grass thickened and ensnared him. Wrapping and twisting around his flailing limbs, he shrieked like a young zebra and frantically bit and tore at the vine-like blades of grass, which grew spines and started to ooze a black juice that gunked up his fur. Again he cried out, but now his throat strangled his pleas. He was bound to the earth. The ground underneath him shuddered. Kovu, Do you think you can run? You can't hide from me. You're mine now. Simba loomed tall over Kovu, who gaped up mutely at the king and his bloody face, which was so heavily stained with the blood of murdered cubs that his jaw dripped red. When Simba threw back his head and laughed at him, Kovu's own blood went cold. How weak Kovu was compared to the big menacing king. The grass shouted Kovu's deep terror, wrapping him up in a neat little package at Simba's paws. The thorny grass vines tightened, piercing his skin, and with that, Simba lunged forward. Kovu jerked awake. His eyes flashed open, and he sat up panting. He had the feeling that someone had been watching him, like his mother sometimes did, and for a moment he looked around the den, expecting to find her. "Mother?" When he saw the unfamiliar lionesses sleeping and snoring peacefully, he deflated. One old Pridelander grunted and moaned as she rolled over in her sleep. They were all completely out, dumb to the world outside their fat, sleeping bodies. As he watched them, apathetic, he noticed that he and Kiara were the only cubs in the pride. The princess has it pretty great here. No competition, no fighting for food, all the lionesses and a father to spoil you. The other cub slept at the center of the den, curled up against her mother's face. Simba, who had been resting with his family, was missing. I wonder where he went. Kovu stood up, stretched, and looked outside to the pale light of the dawn that would eventually bring the den back to life. He blinked. I could run home. Nobody would notice or probably even care. I could run and they wouldn't be able to stop me. I'd just disappear and go home. He glanced at the Pridelanders again. He was always up at first light, but he guessed that they would sleep until the sun had fully risen. Kovu smirked and stepped lightly over the bones of his dinner. If I'm the prisoner, they did the worst job keeping me from leaving. This is as easy as... Kovu skidded to a horrified halt and crouched down when he saw Simba as he walked down the side of Pride Rock. He cursed under his breath. While he watched Simba, all Kovu could think of was how the pretender king had gone claw to tooth with Scar, had threatened the cubs of his mother and the other lionesses, had glowered at his mother with such hatred, and yet had gently pulled him away from his mother and had hunted his dinner. Kovu shook his unclear head. I still can't make it home. It just might be a little harder while Simba's walking around. Kovu waited for a few moments before he crept down the side of Pride Rock, placing his paws carefully on the stone. He watched Simba head out across the savannah. Kovu blinked. What if I follow Simba? Just for a little while. Wouldn't Mother want that? I think she'd approve. I might learn something. When am I gonna get another opportunity like this? With his longer legs, Simba was quickly leaving Kovu behind. Without further hesitation, Kovu made it to the bottom of the rocks and stalked the king, conscious of the ground under his paws. I'm following Simba. Maybe Nuka's training yesterday wasn't so silly after all. All at once, homesickness hit him. I wonder what everyone thought when Mother told them about Simba. How I'm in the Pride Lands. I am their chosen one. Was Vitani sad? Was Nuka? Nah, probably not. Kovu frowned. Why'd Mother give me to Simba? It doesn't make any sense. I wish she would have told me her plan. Normally she does. Am I just payment for my mother's trespassing? She just pushed me over to Simba. Simba walked to the watering hole, which Vitani had told Kovu about, enviously describing how bright the water was. The clarity of the water made the river he crossed from the outlands look even more disgusting. A few gazelles were drinking on the other side, but they didn't run away when they saw the king. As Kovu watched Simba drink, the cub licked his dried tongue over his whiskers. Between his ears, his head throbbed with a dull ache. "I sure am thirsty." Kovu ducked down after Simba drank his fill and turned around. When the king didn't head back to the den, Kovu was surprised. Instead, Simba continued his walk. When he was far enough away, Kovu dashed up to the watering hole. "Wait, are there any crocodiles in here?" Kovu stopped at the bank, craned his neck, and eyed the water suspiciously. The water looked safe enough, and Simba hadn't even blinked before he'd lowered his head to drink. "I don't even care, I'm so thirsty." The calm surface rippled under his tongue as he crouched down and lapped at the clear water. The water was cleaner and had less of a bitter taste than the small, rank watering hole his family had drank from. He couldn't help but think about how rain, when it came, fell on both the Outlands and the Pride Lands, filling both watering holes with hundreds of drops, and yet the water that Simba owned was better. "I think just about everything here so far is better." He closed his eyes. Water droplets collected on his whiskers as the void in his stomach filled with water. Satisfied, he opened his eyes again and swiped his whiskers clean. He lifted his head and looked around. "No time to get back to stalking Simba." Following Simba was fairly easy. His paw prints were huge, and he walked like a lion with no fear, no need to hide broken sticks, turned over rocks, obvious footsteps. Kovu followed the path, walking alongside the paw prints. It wasn't until he finally caught up with Simba that Kovu realized that Simba was headed for the border of the Outlands. He watched the Pride Lander through the grass. "Why is he over here?" The king was looking at the fallen tree. He even tested it out by putting his paws on it and pushing. Kovu lowered his ears. "Oh no, he's going to move my tree. He must have figured out that I used it to get over here. How else will I get back over if he moves it? Do Mother and the lionesses have another way? They've got to have another way over. Could I find it?" It didn't budge, but Simba continued to stare at it, seemingly thinking. Kovu leaned forward, his hairs along his spine standing on end. He took a small step forward without looking. When he felt and heard a twig snap under his paw pads, he cringed. "Oh no!" Simba's ears went back and he turned around, growling. With narrowed eyes, he looked over to where Kovu was hiding in the grass. "Who's there?" Shaking, Kovu pressed his body into the ground. "He's gonna kill me. Nobody else is here. He could kill me and nobody would know. He could lie and tell them I ran away. Not that they'd even care. Why did I think I could follow him? I got cocky." Nose lifted to the air, Simba began to walk forward. The king headed straight for Kovu, who was too scared to run. Simba closed the space between them in 10 steps. Kovu stared up in wide-eyed horror when Simba looked down and found him. Kovu could only crouch there, shivering. Simba stopped short and raised a brow, but the anger and suspicion left his face, which became a neutral calm. He stared back at the cub before he asked quietly, "Were you following me, Kovu?" Simba looked around. "Did you follow by yourself?" The big lion looked down again. He hesitated before he asked, "Were you following me? Or are you going back to the Outlands?" The king blinked and shook his head slowly. There was a faint, stealthy, knowing expression on his muzzle. There was a smile, but not quite a smile. It had only intensified when he said, "I can't stop you." After a moment, Simba stepped to the side, revealing a clear path to the fallen tree. He then started his walk again, following the border. Kovu blinked. Is this a trick? There was a clear shot to the tree trunk. To the Outlands, to home. Simba's back was to him, and he was walking away leisurely. Why would he take me from my mother and then just let me go? Aren't I his prisoner or something? He stared at his enemy's back. Why did you take me? Why did you take me when mother shoved me towards you? He stared at the fallen tree. Mother, why'd you give me to Simba? Did you know he wouldn't kill me? Did you know he would give me food and treat me with the same kindness he treats his daughter? Kovu didn't understand why his mother would tell him that Simba was dangerous if he really wasn't. Why'd she instill fear in him and the other cubs? Because Simba killed Scar. He took the throne from me. That's why Mother wants me to hate him. A soft thought snapped Kovu from his thoughts. He instinctively crouched down and tensed and looked up to find that Simba was standing over him once more. A whiff of fresh blood then caught Kovu's attention, and he looked to where Simba had dropped a small gopher. He caught me more food? I thought you might be hungry after seeing how you cleaned up your dinner. And he's smiling. Really smiling. His stomach betrayed him with a treacherous growl, and he looked down at the second meal Simba had given him. Who is this lion? Simba's smile widened when Kovu's stomach growled. The cub grimaced in embarrassment before looking longingly at the dead gopher. It's not going to hurt you, Simba said jokingly, but then he immediately regretting saying that when Kovu flinched. Maybe I made a mistake bringing the son of my enemy here. I should have just let him cross back over to the Outlands. Zira taught her son to fear me. Maybe that was why she pushed her son towards me. Maybe she thought I would show her son how much of a monster I am. But that wouldn't make sense either. I could have killed Kovu on the spot. Why would she risk the life of Scar's so-called chosen one? She must be playing me. Maybe nothing Zira did made sense. Kovu only stared at his food. Simba took a step back to give him some space. Is there any going back now? What would happen if Kovu went back to the Outlands? Would it be as if this never happened? Answering his own questions, Simba felt a shiver run through him as he recalled the foreboding words Zira had uttered before she had gone back to her decrepit lands. Of course, Simba, as you wish. But you're very wrong to think that this is over. We have barely begun. Why'd you take me from Mother? The quick question came out so fast that Simba barely registered it. And before Simba knew it, he asked back, Why did your mother push you towards me? Kovu shrugged and shook his head. His eyebrows arched high. I don't know. He glanced down and narrowed his eyes. I wish I knew. Simba pursed his mouth. I wish I knew too. Kovu timidly sniffed at his meal. But maybe that doesn't matter, Simba asked himself. I took Kovu for a reason. Simba flicked the end of his tail. I just don't know what that exact reason is yet. Kovu overcame his timidness and bit into the gopher. Simba listened to these soft growls and watched Kovu crouch over his food possessively. He tried hard to keep the pity out of his eyes, but he knew that there was no possibility of hiding it all. When Simba spoke after Kovu had almost stripped all of the meat off the rodent's bones, the cub flinched. I'm finishing up my patrol if you want to keep following me. His voice tinged his words with awkward assuming hope. If not, I still will not stop you from going back to your mother. Though it's your choice to stay here, not your mother's. Kovu chewed on the last bit of food while he sat up and turned his head to look thoughtfully at the fallen tree. Simba turned around. Either he'll follow, or else I won't see him again until his mother tells him to come back for Pride Rock. He turned his ears back and listened anxiously. It was as if one path of time was being split in two possible futures. Only after the fallen tree was out of sight did he allow himself a glance back. A small, almost triumphant smile crossed Simba's face when he saw that Kovu was following him, striding halfway confidently in his paw tracks out of the grass. Simba could never guess exactly why Kovu had chosen not to go home to Zira, but he felt like he'd won a small victory over her. Her son would live in his den, but he would also live under his guidance, and at least for the moment the thin cub had overcome some of his fear for his mother's enemy. But now the big question was, who is Kovu? End of chapter 4.